We're talking about one of my favorite topics today. I was built to taper, and we're talking specifically about tapering for a half marathon. I'm Brad from CoachParry.com, where we help you get fitter, faster, and stronger. And we're joined by our head coach today, Lindsay Parry. We will be talking everything about tapering for a half marathon. So if you're training for a half marathon, you've heard about this thing called a taper. We'll be talking you through exactly what it is, why you should do it, and exactly how to do it as well. That's all coming up on today's video. Lindsay, before we get into sort of how to do it and what you should do, let's talk about what does it mean to actually taper for a half marathon.
So look, tapering obviously depends a lot on the volume of training that you are coming off, but essentially the important aspect of any taper is allowing your body to freshen up so that on race day you can really take full advantage of the training that you have done. And at the same time, we don't want the body to go into like full hibernation or go to sleep. And that's not a great explanation of what I'm trying to get across. But what often happens when we taper, and if we taper too quickly, is that you almost start to get a little bit uncomfortable in your body. It's almost like you tighten up. There's like a response from your body which is used to doing something, and everything seems to almost shorten, and your running stride becomes uncomfortable. So it's a balance between keeping enough stress so that your body still feels like it's in the zone and doing its thing, but releasing enough pressure so that come race day you're able to fully access the training, be fresh, and get your best results.
Let's talk about the actual mechanics of a taper for a half marathon. How long should it be before, like when should you start tapering before race day?
So for a half marathon, again, it does depend a little bit exactly how much training volume has been done. But for me, typically, the taper is going to be around 10 days, possibly only starting the weekend before the actual half marathon, because when we typically training for a half marathon, the volumes aren't quite as high as when you're training for a marathon, although there will be some weeks where it will be, and it's certainly going to be nowhere near an ultra marathon, for example. So I kind of feel like that the weekend, you just don't really want to be doing a really long run the weekend before the half marathon and then into that week. So typically your half marathon taper is 10 days rather than the 2 to 3 weeks for a marathon.
And then are there any sort of rules of thumb with regards to how much you reduce the amount of training you're doing in that taper for the half marathon?
So one of the things that I like about half marathon and training for half marathons is that you can run probably and like race really hard. You can probably do 6 or more in a year and run them really hard. And that gives us an opportunity to start figuring out just how much we need to taper. You know, I've come across people that 2 days of just backing it off for the last 2 days and they bounce back, and that is perfect. And if we go longer, they just don't feel great on race day. So as a rule of thumb, I would say that the weekend before, you cut your training volume in half, and then for the rest of that week you train at exactly half of the training volume that you normally train at, and that you give yourself 1 at least, but probably 2 short sessions where you're running at race pace or slightly faster. So those aren't really speed work. You know, we call it sharpening up, and often when I use the term sharpening up, people think that that's it. Now we got to run these things as hard as possible. No, that's not the idea. It's to run at or just below race pace. Again, that's just all about keeping that range of motion, legs loose, but the sessions are short enough, i.e. at least 50% of your training load from the week before, that you bounce back extremely quickly from those sessions. They often feel, at the end of those sessions, I often tell people you should actually feel like, yes, now I'm ready to race. And it's often actually a really good way of warming up before you do your actual race.
And let's talk about that, the day before and the morning of as part of the taper. Should you be running the day before a half marathon as part of your taper?
So again, typically my answer is yes, and I encourage it. But again, over time, and because half marathons, you can do more than one of them in a year, I would advise people to try both. Because some people respond extremely well to a day off, and some people respond extremely badly to a day off. So you do want to try both scenarios. But my typical pre-race workout, and that when I say pre-race, I'm talking about the day before as well as the warm-up, is typically 5 to 10 minutes of easy jogging with 3 to 5 30-second bursts at my planned race pace, with 30 seconds very easy in between, and then a 2 or 3 minute cool down. And I would repeat that normally the day before, and repeat it again in the morning before I do the race.
Thanks for joining us on this video. Don't forget, if you don't want to miss any of these videos that we put out, hit the subscribe button over here. You can catch our latest video over here, and one of our most popular is over here. And also, if you want to shave 10 minutes off your PB, all you need to do is download our free strength training program. You can get that right here.